Hello everyone, in the previous video we set up the context for needing object-oriented programming, and in this video we're going to start object-oriented programming. More specifically, we are going to cover single inheritance, where one object inherits from another, and we begin that process by creating something called a base class. We will not be creating a base class, but we will be converting a class into a base class. We will be converting shape2D into a base class. So base classes are designed to be super generalized classes. They're pretty abstract, and they are that way so that way other classes can inherit from them and be designed for specific implementations. So why don't we start with my shape2d.h. And in this video we're just going to stay focused on this. So the first thing that we need to do is that we actually need to change this private keyword here. And what private means is that here only the class itself or friend functions can access these attributes. And if I leave it this way, if I inherit from shape2d, I actually won't inherit these values. So in order for me to inherit these values, so that way they're private in the derived classes, what I need to do is that I need to change private to protected. So now they're kind of like private, but now if a class inherits from shape2d, it can inherit these two while gaining access to them, which is what we want. And this is very important that you'll see this in a base class. You'll typically see this in terms of replacing the private, you'll see it as protected. So if you know a class has a protected attributes instead of private, it's probably meant to be inherited from. Luckily, we can keep the three constructors the same. And what I'm actually going to do to the constructor is I'm going to put a special keyword in front of it. It's going to be called virtual. What virtual means is that all other classes that inherit from shape2d will inherit shape2d's destructor. And this kind of makes sense because if I need to do something special here with these two attributes, I need to keep passing that down into other objects that inherit from here. Because when those objects are being destroyed, they need to deal with these attributes as this class with this destructor is dealing with this attributes. However, for this specific implementation, it's not a big deal because we're using statically allocated variables. However, it is best practices to do this. So the idea with putting the virtual keyword is that it allows us to implement the destructor and override it from the previous class. So any class that inherits from this class, I can modify shape2d's destructor to do something more special. This is called overriding a method. So you put the virtual keyword in front of methods that you want to potentially override in the future. Well, if that's the case, we do not need to put virtual in front of the getters because all they do is get attributes, which is going to maintain consistency through all classes, and same thing with setting attributes. However, our miscellaneous methods have a higher chance of being virtual functions because here I'm creating it as a shape2d class. In the future, if I want to implement a triangle class, that's going to have a different area than the one that's defined here in my shape2d class. So here we'll have virtual, and we'll have virtual here. Right, and I do this in preparation of saying, you know what, these are most likely to be the methods that in the future they may be changed. I will say, however, that it is bad practices to make these operators virtual because of the uncertainty of the classes that it may inherit from, and these should be kept the same. For all implementations on overloading operators on derived classes, meaning classes that inherit from the base class, it is best to implement your own operator overloading in that class itself. And the same can be said for friend functions. You should not have your classes that inherit from here inherit this. So with that being said, we actually haven't done much. All we did is add the virtual keyword here for these two methods and the virtual keyword for the destructor. We've also changed the attribute protections from private to protected. Now, something that needs to be said, even though that these have been implemented already, if you have a virtual method, they absolutely need to be implemented. I can leave some other stuff here without an implementation, but if I proceed it with a virtual keyword, they need to be implemented. And this is going to conclude us converting our Shape2D class from just a regular generic class into a base class. In the next video, we are going to delete rectangle.cpp and myrectangle.h, and we are going to recreate them while inheriting from the Shape2D class. And we will see that because these two classes are so similar, I only really have to write new code for stuff that I want to implement in extra detail. And it'll save a lot of code and a lot of energy because we can let the Shape2D class do a lot of the heavy lifting instead of adding more redundancy to our rectangle class. Thank you.